Our guest tonight, Alex Hearn. Alex, again, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us tonight.
I'm enjoying it.
Let me get a few questions off for you, okay?
Yeah, I'll shut up for a minute.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Carol writes in, says, does Alex give any credibility to the Bugs, the guy who said he and the other two shot a pair of Bigfoot in the Texas Panhandle, buried the bodies, fearing somehow they had committed a murder?
Does she mean the guys that used to go on the Art Bell show?
Yes. Yes.
I believe that was proved to be a hoax. It was, I don't think set up by Art, but it was a radio broadcaster from that area in Texas, just below Oklahoma there. And he's also, I think, done some stuff on Obama, this guy. He's a showman of some sort, and I think he was heavily involved in the birth certificate deal with Obama. I forget his name. So that one, no, I do not give any credibility to it.
Okay. Another question. Red writes in, says, does Alex suspect these creatures to be omnivores or vegetarians?
I think just like me and you, they eat a little bit of everything, so they're omnivores.
They, from what I've heard from some of the local, we used to have a group here in town that had them on the show that they were cryptozoologists. Their group broke up though for whatever reason, but said they seemed to think that deer were their favorite food.
You know, that may be because venison is delicious, right?
Right.
Elk too, and I would think any creature they can get their hands on. Unfortunately, some of them possibly even humans. You know, I think what the Melba Ketchum DNA test showed is that they are a novel hominin species, a type of human. And just like with us, there's, you know, we've been talking about some of the bad ones in this field. Just like with every human, there's good and there's bad. We think there's some that are, you know, meat eaters. And when we say that, we don't necessarily mean just elk and deer. We mean, you know, this is probably why some humans have gone missing in this area. The story here in Arizona that goes back a long, long way, up in the Springerville area, Mount Escadilla, is that the story of the screaming lady. And I've actually heard this so-called scream. I heard it when I was up on Mount Baldy at Lee Valley Lake. And it just sounded like a woman or a Indian war cry. And I'll tell you what, there's no roads. I was on the old road. It dead ends at the lake. There's nothing behind that lake. You know, I mean, there's just forest. And there was no cars anywhere nearby where people could have hiked from. If you go through that to the reservation, in a short distance, you would be from U.S. Forest Service land onto the White Mountain Apache Reservation. But there's nothing there for miles. So, you know, there'd be no reason for Native Americans to hike up that way. It would take them days. Even with horses and such, it would take days. And what I heard was just this kind of creepy scream from the left and then from the right, and it seemed to get closer to me. And the way the story goes on Mount Escudilla is that, you hear the scream gets closer to you to draw you to it. And then when you start following it, it gets farther away, and farther away, and farther away. And, eventually you're lost. And you never be heard from again. And, now I have no proof of this. I'm just telling the myth. But, a great writer and somewhat of a friend of mine and colleague from the Melba Ketchum study is Dave Pilates, and he's written now, I think, 4 or 5 books.
Yes. Yeah, I've had him on the show. Very interesting.
I thought so. And I was chatting with him earlier today on one of my posts. He's got all these examples of people that have just gone missing, right from camp practically. And, a line of people and the last one disappears, just like in a movie on TV or something. It's very, very strange and a little bit scary. Now, I don't believe in all these people that say they habituate with Bigfoot, but take it with a grain of salt. Some of these people who say they communicate with Bigfoot and, habituate with Bigfoot, and I can get into that a little bit later, but what they're saying right now, and, they say they communicate, the Bigfoot talk to them. What they say is that Bigfoots are telling them that there's been an overwhelming increase in evil Bigfoot creatures, and that, they've been warned not to do what I do, to, go out in the woods by themselves. I don't know if that's true or not. The scream that I was just going to tell you about before the break, it was so loud and so ungodly, totally different than this other scream. It vibrated through my chest. And this is why you do this. This is the thrill of why you do this. But I have never been so scared in all my life. And where else could a 50-year-old human being have this type of stuff happen to him, except for maybe in a dark alley in the ghetto type areas of the world,
Right.
And I got in my truck and I stayed there till I ate those 2 sausages and finished my beverage. It took me 20 minutes to get out for another beverage. I got that beverage, got back in the truck, and I fell asleep before I even opened the beverage from the stair. I woke up. It was just about daybreak. I waited for the sun to come up. I packed my stuff, and I got the heck out of there. But I was just being smart. But that was what I consider one of the most successful nights in the forest, We've heard chest thumping on numerous occasions. We saw trees shake violently. I think in each case they're not telling us they want us there, I think they'd do something friendlier if they were happy that we pulled up, And this seems to happen at our, what we call the hut zone, at our base camp, when we very first arrived. A lot of times with a witness, I'll be there with Mitch. And, the first thing we do after this 3 or 4 hour drive is we want to just walk around and stretch our legs. And that's when things seem to happen, at least the chest thumping, violent tree shake. Another night, Mitch had left, but he let us use his gazebo to keep us out of the rain because it was raining that night. And I had stayed up late with this other researcher's husband, who was a lawyer down here in the valley and did not believe in what we do. And, I stay up to the witching hour when I'm out there, at least 2, 3 in the morning. And he stayed with me. We were sitting on top of a picnic table. Just, he was giving me the 3rd degree, kind of like we do in radio interviews a little bit. And, he's asking me this and that. And we're both looking into the woods the same direction. And I don't know if you've ever played ball, but I'm big into athletics, played all sports my whole life, organized.
Mm-hmm.
And I played with some really, really good baseball players. And I played third base, first base, so I've gotten these, guys with rifle arms that you wonder why they're not in the MLB. And the ball just sizzles when it comes to it. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe when Nolan Ryan or Tom Seaver are warming up, you can hear that sizzle. And this softball-sized rock came out of the woods directly where we were looking. And, all you saw was the trees kind of rustle, and this softball come at us that was a rock, and it landed directly next to the picnic table, rolled way by it. That man got up. He started running around. We had the Coleman lantern hung on a couple of trees, and we usually leave them on. We found that it does not hurt anything. If anything, it helps because they want to come and kind of see what you're doing. So he got scared. He shut all of them off one by one. He ran around shutting them off. Then he used a couple of derogatory words, and what the heck am I doing? And he went back to each one and he turned them on. And then he got back on the table and he just sat there shaking. And the next morning he still wouldn't admit that, it was a Bigfoot creature, but he wanted to get the hell out of there real quick. He didn't want to stay anymore. He didn't want to stay another night with his wife. He made them pack up and leave. So I've turned a lot of non-believers into, well, I wouldn't say into believers, into like shivering little squirrels,
Do you think that, Alex, these creatures, if and maybe this is a crazy question, but if they get cornered or they feel that they're cornered or you maybe have the upper hand, do you feel that they may charge you or maybe even more than charge you, but try to take you out of the picture?
I definitely do. Definitely do. One of the stories that got us into the hot zone, into the Sierra Arches, is of 4 hunters. And they split up into pairs. And then one pair split up, and they were going to go each around this cluster of trees and meet up on the other side. And they were all in communication with radios. And so, 2 were gone off a ways, a few hundred yards, quarter mile, whatever, and these 2 are splitting up to go around this big set of hammy-type trees, smaller trees, thick brush. Personally, I would have went right through it, but that's another story. They got separated completely, and the one guy heard a thump and a groan, and he called on the radio to his buddy, so-and-so, you there, you all right? No answer. Of course, the other 2 guys can hear that, and they're like, Joe, what's going on? And he says, I don't know, I just heard something, and now so-and-so isn't answering. So they're like, okay, we'll hightail it to your direction. And, of course, he went around the cluster of trees trying to find his friend. And he did. He found his friend, and he was out cold. And he woke him up. And the guys, what's going on? What's going on? Where am I? Who hit me? Why'd you do that? He says, I didn't hit you. I was nowhere near you. He says, well, somebody hit me from behind. And then he realized, where's my gun? And they're looking around for the rifle. And finally they looked up, and the rifle was thrown up in the tree. It was hanging by its arm strap on a branch about 15 feet high. Then they heard the report of a couple of gunshots, and their friends came over the radio. Actually, they called to the friends, "Are you okay?" And he said, "Yeah, we just saw a couple of large guys in fur jackets running away from you guys. And so-and-so took a couple of shots at them." So hopefully they didn't hit them, because obviously they weren't, the creature was just trying to escape. You know, I think he felt threatened.
Just wanted to rid out.
Out, yeah. And we're 100% as a group, and I will not go into the woods with anybody that's different. We're 100% not pro-kill. You know, we do not believe in hurting these creatures because, for one, they're, you know, according to my DNA study, they're human. So I think anybody that shoots these creatures is, you know, basically a human murderer. But here's the thing. In most states, it's actually illegal to shoot a primate, too. And Arizona is one of those states. I believe California also is. I believe Oregon is. And, you know, there's no primates running around the woods except for humans. So why would they have that law? I think the state governments and the Forest Service know something they're not telling us.
Question that came in for you from the chat room. It says, is Alex aware of Les Stroud's Search for Bigfoot, his 2-part TV show on it? If so, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are it's for TV and it's entertainment. If he really wanted to search, he would have took me with him, or someone like me. You know, I didn't see the second one. I did see the first one. But, you know, it's funny, you know, you go into the woods to make a Bigfoot movie and suddenly you have an incident. Isn't that kind of fun?
Right. Yeah, interesting. Have there been more creature sightings? I know at least here in Utah, in Salt Lake City, Provo Canyon, if you YouTube it or do a little digging into it, and it's actually gained the local media, at least Fox it did. There has been quite a few sightings up there lately. Are these creatures? You think they're getting a little? You think it's just people with the digital cameras are at the right time, right place, or do you think in general these creatures are maybe starting to expose themselves a little bit more?
Possibly a little of both. I think, excuse me again, there's no check and balance to keep these creatures from multiplying. You know, they're at the top of the food chain, so, you know, there's nothing stopping them. And, I mean, I couldn't even comprehend how many times more people are in the woods. Every single person that goes in the woods, you know, has probably 2 cameras on them, because most people are bringing a camera. They got their cell phone, that's another camera. Some of them are bringing video cameras and still cameras. You know, I carry 3-4 cameras. But even people that are just going to take pictures of the foliage and the birds are carrying all these cameras. And you know what? I think people are even getting a little braver, and they're hiking deeper into the woods, and they're going out at different times when people didn't always go out. You know, 2 or 3 different times I've come upon people that I've had to give stuff to because they, you know, went out in the woods and didn't realize how cold it was and this and that. So I've given them food, I've given them clothes, I've given them blankets, you know, just so they can make the weekend. And so I think there's just a multitude of more people in the woods. And, you know, maybe, and this is a total guess, maybe a slight amount of more creatures, hopefully on the well-behaved side. I've had 2 face-to-face incidents with the creatures, so I'm not going by a guess. I know they exist.
Close encounters, Alex? Pretty close encounters?
20 feet.
Wow. Startle you, come out of nowhere type of thing?
Yeah. One was obviously paralleling me. I was on Forest Road 288, which is at this part of the road. It's a dirt road. I was leaving a sign from my videographer that I mentioned earlier.
Uh-huh.
He hadn't. Everything okay?
Yeah.
He hadn't yet joined the group, and so I was gonna, nail a sign with some fluorescent marker writing on it. It just said AZCRO this way. I didn't want him to miss the camp, and he hadn't been there yet at that time. And there was no place to nail the sign, so I put it right on the U.S. Forest Service sign, and I was going to remove it the next day, but technically that's, a no-no. But I had nowhere else to put it for this kid, and figured he'd be driving down the road, and his lights would hit the fluorescent marker, and he'd probably be going too fast to read it. He'd have to back up, but I was hoping to do that. And I nailed the sign on the post, and I was a good, maybe half mile out of camp, and walked up the road as far till I found something close enough to the road to put the sign on. And there was a witness nearby, this man named Jerry, who owns a bait shop in Roosevelt, Arizona, was camping nearby it. And we had told him while we were there, he said, please don't scare his kids. So we didn't mention it when his kids were around what we were doing. He was on the road with his ATV, and his ATV stalled. And, it's kind of funny. I didn't put two and two together, but that's one of the things that some people think happens when these creatures are nearby. Equipment stalls, cars stall. I never thought of that, but that's what happened. His ATV stalled. It was kind of like a homemade one. It had, raw mufflers and stuff. It was making a big racket. To tell you the truth, we were kind of bummed that he was there. And it stalled. I was walking down the road. I had just nailed the sign on the post, and I heard crunch, 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 crunch to my left. And I turned and I looked, and in the thicket was a creature I could only see from the chest up. And what it was doing, it had its arms in front of it, and it was lifting the branches up out of its way, and it would take a step into that opening. And it was doing that, and I watched it for a couple of seconds, and as it took a step, I heard the crunch of a little crackle of twigs breaking. And I stared at it for a couple of, it seemed like 1 or 2 or 3 seconds before it realized I was staring at it. So it was walking, parallel to me, and then it just turned and looked at me. Maybe it realized there was silence and, hey, maybe I could hear it. And sure enough, I was looking right at it when it turned and looked right at me. Its face kind of lit up. Eyebrows went way up. Its mouth formed a, like an O, he can see me kind of look. And I heard in my head, oh, shoot, he can see me. And I don't know if that was mind speak that we hear people talk of, or if I was, just understanding its look. But that's what I heard inside my head. And here's something that I don't tell a lot of people, and I've only actually just started admitting happened, because I always try to hold something back. But I have a new theory that I've been trying to work out, and it's just that, a theory. Like, for an instant, its eyes flashed to me, kind of like lit up greenish color. And after that, I was just focused on its face. And its face was incredibly human-like, incredibly Adonis-looking, big. You know, I always said the creature was probably 6'6", maybe 7 feet, because its feet were lower than mine, and I was looking at it pretty much right in the eyes.
Right.
But it had, and you know, maybe you remember the movie from the 70s or late 60s called The Gargoyle.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Ernie Casey was the head gargoyle.
Yes.
Scott Glenn was in that movie. It's one of Scott Glenn's first movies. It was filmed right here in Arizona. That's the face that looked at me. It wasn't green, of course, like the gargoyle, but it was a very human-like, good-looking, but yet ugly face. The brow was hugely exaggerated. The lips, the nose was big, but it wasn't a pug nose. It was a human nose. And the eyes, except for that instance where they flashed, they were really, really, really dark and set in. Scared the life out of me. I don't know if I let out a little bit of a yell or not, but Jerry, who was 100 yards away on the ATV, the creature immediately, after it did that, oh, he can see me type of look, and I got that voice in my head, it immediately turned its back to me and started doing exactly what it was doing into the thickets, and within 3, 4, 5 steps, it disappeared into the thicket. But I could see the thickets going up and down where its arms was moving them out of the way. It was almost surreal, like something out of a cartoon. And at that moment, Jerry yelled to me, "What was that?" And I said, you know, "Did you see it too?" And he had his son with him. He just nodded his head yes. And he got on his ATV, started right up, and he drove back to camp. A weird coincidence that the ATV stalled when the creature was there, and then started right up like nothing was wrong with it. But he witnessed it too. The thing with this creature, there was none of this horrible smell that people talk about.
Right.
There was, you know, some people say the fur was matted and this and that. No way. This fur, it looked like somebody was grooming it. It was so silky and groomed, you know, whether it was done by fingers or the trees or what, I don't know, but it was in a way kind of beautiful looking, although I was scared out of my wits. And it had what I've later discovered is what's called a cap. You'll see it on some orangutans, gorillas, and baboons. The big clump of hair that comes down from its head and covers its back almost looks like a humpback. But it wasn't a humpback, it was just fur. And I first described it as like a mane because it was just so well groomed, you know, like on a hut. But it wasn't that. It had more substance to it. And it's exactly what you see in baboons, mostly, and occasionally in orangutans and gorillas. Just this big clump of hair from its head to its shoulders and down its back. I immediately called on the radio from Mitch. He was back at camp, but we had some visitors, some people that didn't normally come with us. You know, we're kind of like a novelty, so every once in a while, people that aren't really researchers will want to come with us, and this was one of those times. And they were being loud and kind of having fun, and Mitch couldn't hear me on the radio. So after I got my senses back, I didn't have a weapon. I did have my knife with me. A lot of good that would have done because I was shaking too hard to take it out. But I hightailed it back to camp. Pretty much a whole group of us went back to the location and looked for this creature. The ground was too hard. There was no footprint, but you could see a path where it went through the thicket. And that's not the first time we've seen that exact kind of detail. But I never felt threatened, but I did feel real stupid after it ran away. The first thing I thought of was, geez, if it wanted to, if it was a big cat, you know, it would have had me. That's just my unique thought on the subject. My second sighting, if we have time, don't want to.
No, go ahead. We got a couple questions for you, but go ahead.
My second sighting was on the Apache reservation, just north of McNairy. And I was with a large group. Java Bob Smallsback was with us. I was with a couple other people. And we were driving into a location that had been known to have screens. And technically this wouldn't be too far from Mount Baldy where I was and heard the screams. So I assume they're probably similar screams that were heard. And we're driving in. We're about 12 miles north of the 260 in some, you know, basically private reservation land. And we got a whole convoy, 4 or 5 cars. And we all got our windows down because, of course, we're going to a location where people hear screams, and we're listening. Nobody's talking. And from the south side of the road, we heard a loud scream. And everybody hit their brakes. And, you know, I had one person in the truck with me, and he's like, "Did you hear that?" I'm like, "Yeah." And just as we said that, we heard basically what sounded like maybe an answer from the north side of the road, from, you know, the left and then from the right. So we all got out of the vehicles, and we decided to do a little bit of a search right there. There was four guys in the group I was with, 4 researchers, 2 older guys that were going to man the equipment, and then a bunch of Native Americans that were taking us to this location. So the young guys, the Native American guys, they, as a group, went to the south side of the road. We happened to be downhill, and the 4 guys I was with, actually 3, Rob, Steve, and myself, we went to the north side of the road. And we spread out about 100 yards in between each other. We had what were called heat seekers, which are kind of like a device. It almost looks like a taser, but it's not a taser. Somehow it measures heat, and when it gets onto something, the lights kind of light up faster and faster the closer you are. We each had one of those, and we had monocle night vision. So night vision that is just one eye. And we spread out, we're looking through the woods, and the guy who was the lowest in you know, closest to the road, and we all had radios, and he called us down. He said he thought he saw something go behind a tree and not come out, so he thought he had it kind of trapped behind a tree. We came down, we stood there, we waited, nothing came out from the tree. We actually went around the tree, there was nothing there. So we decided, you know, we didn't really think he was lying or anything. We just decided to, okay, let's spread out again and see what happened. I hightailed it as fast as I could up the mountain, kind of in a half arc, because I figured whatever he saw was going up the mountain, and if I ran straight, it would know I was running straight. So I did a kind of a sweep, basically a military maneuver to, you know, get to that point, but I ran around a long way to do it, so it wouldn't know I was coming. I got to that location, I started looking with my night vision, and sure enough, I saw something go behind a tree, just like he described. and I stayed looking at it with the night vision. But, you know, they're monocular, they're on one eye, and you kind of, if nothing happens after a few minutes, you lose confidence in the equipment. I took it down. As soon as I took it down, the creature stepped out from the tree. It was actually now between two thinner trees, again, probably only 15, 20 feet from me. This one was thin. Couldn't see the hairs good because it was slightly later at night. It was just after dark, but there was a good moon showing. But it looked a little bit straggly hair-wise. It didn't look anywhere near as well-groomed as the other one. It wasn't as big, and the fur didn't seem to be as long. And what it did was immediately did a sway, like a left and right sway, kind of like you would do in the supermarket when you come upon someone, you know, going in the opposite direction and they want to get by. You know how you do a little left-right dance? Sure. That's what it did to me. And I immediately got the impression that it just wanted to go by. And I don't know what I was going to do, but at that moment, my radio crackled. Java Bob Schmalzbeck and Tom Biscardi were down on the road, and Tom had set up his thermal image camera, and he said, "Alex, we can see you." And, you know, I'm a Boston guy, so I wear my shorts and my sneakers until we get into the woods, and then I'll throw on my boots and heavy gear and such. And, of course, we weren't into the location yet, so I was still in my, you know, dungaree-type shorts and T-shirt. And he says, "We see you. We see your heat signature. We can see your bare legs. We can see your shorts. We can see, you know, your T-shirt. Can tell the difference because the heat signature's coming through the T-shirt different than it is the pants. We know that's you." He says, and he didn't see the creature in front of me, maybe because it was standing between the two trees and a tree was blocking it in his direction. He says, "But we see something coming up behind you that is huge. Just be careful." And when he said that, I heard that same crunch crunch that I heard the year prior. This time, I had in my head that, you know, a year ago when I had my chance, I did nothing. And here I have a small creature right in front of me, but maybe something deadly would have happened if I tried to catch it. I turned around and I just ran as fast as I could at the noise that I heard. And the woods exploded. Whatever it was going rampantly nuts away from me. And the guys on the radio, excuse me, started screaming, "Don't do that. Where are you going? Cut it out. Come back here." And I just chased it. And it got to a point where it got ahead of me. There was no way I could keep up with it. It got ahead of me, and it stopped. And I kept going a little bit, but of course now I lost the directional input of the noise. And I was looking around, kind of deciding where to go, and it started running again. And it did this 3 or 4 times until it led me, you know, a good 500 yards, quarter of a mile, something like that, away from the people that I was with. And the whole time they were screaming at me, "Alex, don't do that. Get back here." And finally it hit me. This thing is luring me deeper into the woods.
Wow.
And I answered them on the radio. I was kind of almost in a trance, and I finally answered them, and I said, "Okay, I'm coming back." And, you know, I kind of lost my bearings because I ran at an angle up the hill and you know, side hill and up the hill. So I mean, I'm sure I could have found my way back to where I was, but I would not be able to tell that location from another. So what I did do is I just went down the mountain, and I knew, I had to bump into that road. I bumped into that road. I was a good quarter mile from my rig and all the other vehicles. And, they're looking into the woods for me. And I came walking up the road behind them. And they really chastised me, but I didn't want to let the opportunity slip by like I did the last time. And Tom and Bob, they tell this story, and I guess it endeared me to them. They thought I was the real deal after that, I guess. And tell you what, after I realized what I was doing, I wasn't such a brave person. I was pretty scared.
Oh, well, again, that's the thing. It seems that there are people that are interested in finding these things, these creatures, but I believe that you better be prepared if you encounter one, because, like you said, you may end up getting hurt, getting killed, getting attacked. Let me go ahead and throw a couple questions out at you that did come in. Red from the other side of the world writes, it said, are there any records, clues, artifacts left at the prehistoric site in Mogollon, Arizona, that they ever encountered a Bigfoot type being?
I guess he means on the Mogollon Rim.
Yes.
No, I don't know of any people that have artifacts except for, us, the footprints that we've gotten. I casted a huge one, 19 inches, 9 inches wide. There's been a couple of stories throughout history. One of them is that Escadilla Mountain story, and what happened on that is this group, was lured up the mountain just like I was, and they finally figured out that they're being tricked, and they more or less lit the mountain on fire. They lit the top of the mountain on fire to try to, get whatever was up there. I'm sure whatever it was escaped before the fire got to it because they're swift and quick. And so no artifacts from that story. And the stories that I know of on the other end of the Mogollon Rim, near Payson and Heber, I don't know of any artifacts that have been found or kept, except for, I'm sure there's other people with footprints. The Mogollon Rim is an escarpment that goes from west of Flagstaff all the way to maybe a third through New Mexico. Third of New Mexico. It's about 200 miles long. And at some point, it's a 2,000 foot cliff. Basically what it is the upper plateau is coming over the bottom plateau, and they're two titanic plates. And, you can literally look at the side of the Mogollon Plateau up all around the 260 on a drive from Payson to Heber. You can see it best. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing to see. There's been a couple of other stories at the bottom of this rim or escarpment. There was the old Boy Scout camp, Camp Geronimo, which is now the Tonto Fish Hatchery. And there's a couple of stories that have been written about at that camp. Don Davis, who passed away in 2002, was a nature and wildlife writer for this area. He tells of one of the stories that happened to him in the 40s. And then there's another story that's a little more eerie. I'm not sure if it's true, but the story is that the Boy Scouts were camping, having a jamboree type thing with 100 Boy Scouts or so, and that a creature or a bear came into camp and attacked, basically the camp, and one of the Boy Scout leaders was mauled or killed. And it's said to be a grizzly bear or a Bigfoot. And, I can't find any proof that story really happened. There hasn't been any grizzlies in Arizona since about that time, 1930s. Clubfoot was the last one that was here. He was a real mean grizzly because he had a broken leg, so they called him Clubfoot.
Mm-hmm.
He walked around on 3 good legs and 1 bad leg, so I'm sure he was pretty vicious. But I haven't been able to prove if that actually happened. There's no artifacts from it. The Boy Scouts of America did sell that property to the state. It became the Tonto Fish Hatchery, and the Boy Scouts moved a little further away down the mountain. There's a Camp Geronimo to this day, but it's not the same camp. But I have not ever found any artifacts, and that includes being on the reservation in the Game and Fish office of the Apache White Mountain tribe, and even in the Navajo land, although I haven't dealt too much with the authorities on the Navajo land. I have not found any artifacts so far that I can say definitively are from or Bigfoot.
Gotcha. Alex, we got to wrap it up. The 2 hours went way too quick. I enjoy listening to you all the time and all your updates and all your research, everything that's going on. If our listeners want to check out your website, they go to azcro.net. It's a great website with a ton of work, and again, appreciate all the dedication that you do in researching these creatures and now the UFO stuff.
I've just been really, really lucky. That my friends call me a SHIT magnet, and when we head out into the woods, we seem to be very lucky. I've had stuff happen up in the Four Corners, Arizona area when I was with J.C. Johnson. I've had stuff happen, in the area where we've got the toenail, the White Mountains, the area we call the Hut Zone, which is the Sierra Rancheras. I've just been really, really lucky, I think, to be in the right location at the right time. And I go in there with a friendly state of mind. I'm not sure if these creatures can read that. A lot of people say they can. And I go in there just hoping to see them and have some interaction, and a lot of times we do. Some people say that's the attitude you have to have. I'm not one of these kind of fairy tale tellers, that think, if you go in there and you just think Bigfoot, come to me, they'll come. I don't believe in that stuff, but heck, maybe it does work. I don't know.
Well, it takes time and patience, and more so dedication, and that's what you do. You just keep going at it.
That's it. What I've been lucky enough to do is to go a lot. And, I think I put in the chat room that I've spent over $200,000 in a couple of vehicles doing this. So it's not something you can do cheap. You can go just camping and hope you see them, but you really got to put some money into it and go a lot consistently and stuff. And maybe before, real quick,
yep,
we're trying to get the toenail nuclear DNA tested. We're a little less than $1,300 short from our goal. So if anybody would like to be involved in that science, they can go to my website that you just gave, and down the bottom there's a donate PayPal button. They can donate $5, $10, $100. We're not proud. We'll take anything. And everybody that donates is going to get a copy of the report from the DNA lab when I get it completed. So if they want to be involved, they can't get into the woods, they can always help me.
Well, any help we can give you, anything we can do to help promote it, we'll do. Alex, have a great weekend, my friend. Let's stay in touch, get you back on. And again, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me. I love coming on with you guys, so thank you very much.
Okay, Alex. Take care. Have a good night. Be safe.
You too.
Bye-bye.